So I was just going to talk briefly about, the steps and what we look at when we go out and do an inspection. I know I'm really short, so it's hard to see me behind the podium. I was just going to kind of walk you guys through that, talk about home hardening, which is one of the components that is very important that it's paired with defensible space. But, yep, you want me back over closer? Okay, all right. All right, so when we get a request to go out and do an inspection, we take a look first at the fire hazard severity maps, and we're trying to get an idea of what area that you're in so we know what laws are applicable to you in that area. And then when we go out and we do the inspection, the first thing that we're looking at is when we're driving down the street, we're looking to see that there's good clearances, that we can make good access to your house. Some people have really long driveways that come off of the main roads, and we want to make sure that we can get fire and emergency medical equipment can respond down those driveways to get to you. We're looking at the houses to see if they have an address on them. In Carmel, obviously there's not always going to be an address on a house. We love it when people put like Lincoln to southwest of 2nd, something like that on there that lets us know we're really at the right place. We like to see reflective numerics. It should be at least 4.5 inches in height, contrasting color background. And when you do it in reflective, then we're pretty sure when we shine our spotlights on it at night that we're going to be able to see that, or in the low light conditions with fog. We're also going to start then with the home hardening aspect of your house, and this portion of the inspection is educational. It's not required changes that you have to make. It's just stuff that we're going to tell you that we've seen that makes a difference. So the first thing we start at is we look at your roof, and we want to make sure that your roof is fire resistive. If you have a wood shake shingle roof on there, we're obviously going to advise you to maybe, change that out. And at the very least, have a Class A assembly underneath that roof, so if something does burn through, it's going to slow it down in the underlayment of the roof. Then we're going to take a look at your chimney, and we're looking for a spark arrestor on your chimney if you have a solid fuel burning fireplace, so that the sparks don't come out and start anything on fire. We also are looking that the branches are at least 10 feet away from your chimney. Then we're going to take a look at the siding, the exterior siding of your house. And once again, if we're seeing wood siding, we're going to talk about maybe down the line, if you're going to do some retrofitting, that you look at some other options like a cement fiber board or something like that, that you can change out that wood siding. If we're seeing that you have gaps that are larger than 1/8 of an inch, we're going to ask you to fill that in with durable caulk so that the embers can't get in there and start a fire. Embercast is like the #1 reason, folks, that we're seeing the loss of structures. The embers are going over 1 mile past the head of the fire, and then they're lodging up underneath eaves and in all these cracks and things that they can find around the houses. So if you're keeping that in mind, it's really going to help you for looking yourself and seeing what kind of changes that you can make. So we look at the siding, then we're going to look at your eaves. If you have those unenclosed eaves, you'll see like the rafter tails sticking out. We recommend that you soffit those in, so you're going to enclose that. So once again, if the embers come, they don't get stuck up underneath there and burn their way through into the house. Vent screens is another big one that we look at. We don't want those openings any larger than a 1/8 of an inch, because those little tiny squares there, the larger those openings are on your vent screens, the more viable an ember's going to be once it burns through those openings. So if they're small and maybe you have a flame resistant type ember screen as well, those embers are not going to be able to burn their way through and start a fire into your house. So the next thing that we look at is the area that is immediately surrounding your house. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier with that zone 0. Like we said, it's not law yet because we're still waiting for the Board of Forestry to give us those exact guidelines. But once those guidelines come out, then we'll be looking at that in the very high hazard severity areas. It's also just a good thing to do anyway, is remove everything combustible away from your house. I know people love the wood chips within 5 feet of the house, getting rid of that, replacing vegetation with succulents in that 5-foot area, or using planting containers that aren't combustible. So stay away from the plastic pots and things that they have out there, because they'll melt and they'll burn. So the other thing is, like, say you have a smaller lot and you don't have room to move trash cans and things like that. They have to be those plastic trash cans right up next to your house. All we're going to say is, if there was a fire coming through, before you evacuate, pull those at least 30 feet away from your house. Get those away. Same thing with on your decks. If you have like a lot of lawn furniture, cushions and combustibles or teak, get that stuff and pull it at least 30 feet away, or put it inside the house, move it into the garage before you evacuate in a fire. So that the zone 1 then is that next zone that we're looking at, and in that, like we discussed earlier, is just really thinning it out and making sure that it's well maintained, well watered. Don't let stuff have all that dead woody material in there. Get rid of a lot of the surface litter that's on the ground. I know people like to mulch it in and put it back into the soil. Just make sure it's not more than 3 inches in depth, otherwise that'll burn like a ground fire right across if you have leaves and pine needles and things like that. And then that zone 2, where we're the 30 to 100 feet out, that is that reduced fuel zone that we were talking about earlier, with the the different formulas for, if the steeper it is, the steeper your slope is, the more spacing you need between vegetation. So really the whole point of all of these inspections that we do is to slow or stop a fire from even getting to your structure, and giving the firefighters a safe place that they can get in there and actually get to work defending your home. That's about it for that. Does anybody have any questions? It's kind of the down and dirty. Go ahead.
I actually have 2 questions. The first is that I did replace my roof. I have a nice composition roof.
Okay.
On the downside, my neighbor's roof is a wood roof. What can I do about that? I'm pretty close to that neighbor's house.
So when we come around and we're doing our inspections, we're going to talk to people and educate them as well. Hopefully, there's good relations with your neighbors. We always recommend that, people try to talk to your neighbors about concerns and things, but we obviously don't want any fights or anything out there. So we come around, we'll talk, and we'll bring some of these things forward for you. But, where the law stands is, if they're allowed to have it, they're allowed to have it. However, you can make sure that you're doing all of your clearances to the best of your ability and making your property as safe and retrofitted as possible.
Thank you. And the second question is a deck.
Yeah.
A deck with spacing between the boards. And leaves go, especially live oak tree leaves, going through those spaces. So I did read that maybe one could put gravel under the deck. Well, I don't know if I can get gravel under the deck that easy. It has to go through the holes. But would putting a layer of sand help? Or any other mitigation to try to stop ember going under the deck and starting a fire?
So it's not just it passing through, it's actually catching that debris on fire in the cracks too, and then catching your deck on fire.
I can clean the cracks, and I do clean the cracks.
Excellent. I was going to say I do that on mine too. I get those cracks, and I just make sure that I actually use a little butter knife and then just run down the cracks to get that stuff. But Underneath your deck, you shouldn't have more than 4 inches of grass under there, dried grass. So just make sure that you're keeping all that vegetation cut down so that if, some burning material does fall down there, that it doesn't have a lot of fuel. But I love your idea about sand, bare mineral soil, gravel, all those things, they're non-combustible. So that would be fabulous if you were able to put a nice layer under there in case something did fall through.
Oh, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? Oh.
On a similar note to the deck question, so decks, but also wooden fences that directly abut the side of the building. How do property owners deal with that? That's quite prevalent and yet can be quite costly to replace.
Agreed, definitely. So we recommend that last 8 feet of the fencing that comes up before it touches your house, that you replace that with something that is fire resistive or non-combustible. Fencing acts just like a candle wick. It'll start burning at one end and then just make its way right up to your house. And especially if your house has wood siding, it's just going to burn right up to that, and now it's got another entry point. So would recommend replacing that. I did see some vendors out here, and that state fire marshal list I was talking to you guys about, there are some vendors on there and some products that you could look at with replacing that last 8 feet that comes up to the house. And then decking, I think you had a question about decking. So same thing, you can take a look. There's some special PVC type materials and composite materials and things that are on that state fire marshal list that you can take a look at. And then you can do simple things like if you're on a hillside with your deck, you could build a little wall that'll help take the brunt of any flame front that's coming up. You can also wrap the footings with some type of sheet metal so that if they're made of wood, so that it also helps make it more impervious to flame. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There we go. I represent the Oak Grove Neighborhood Association. The question is, are you available or someone from your staff available to speak at the neighborhood associations?
Yes, great question. We love that. We love coming out and being able to speak at those kind of meetings, and we love it when you get a group together and we can all walk around a house together and do an inspection, and we can educate a big group at one time. So that would be wonderful.
Excellent.
If you email us, we had cards out there at our fire prevention table. Email us or give us a call, and I'd be happy to come on out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Be in touch.
You bet.
You mentioned wood chips close to the home. We're noticing that even the municipal landscapers are putting wood chips and shredded wood everywhere, including on the fire department's property. So there needs to be some education, I think, among not just the homeowners, but even the landscapers. Is that an issue that you see?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily an issue, but it is definitely something that we're working on. We love it when we go out and we're doing the defensible space inspections and we catch landscaping companies actually at the property working on it, because then we can walk them through it as well. And then if we can educate them, then just think of all their, the people that are contracting with them that they're going to pass that information on to as well. Realtors, that's another really big one that we are trying to educate them as well, because they do come in contact with a lot of people that are buying and selling their homes. So, but yes, the wood chips is a sticky one, definitely 5 feet away from the house. And then, just thinking with the ember cast falling further out, even in that zone 1 as well, there's better materials that can be used. Agreed.
Second question, I was talking to the Vulcan vent guy out here, and there's something called intumescent paint. which is paint that you can paint wood surfaces, and it swells up when it gets hot, and it prevents the wood from burning. I've been trying to find information about that, and they have some exterior intumescent paints that you can have tinted, but none of the paint stores know anything about it, and there's apparently only one company, the company that supplies Vulcan vents with their paint. If you get information about that, it would be useful to put that out.
Thank you, definitely. There are a lot of companies out there that have a lot of different products, and that's why we're so happy the State Fire Marshal's office is tackling that and taking a look at research and vetting it and putting it on lists for you folks. So not everything that is going to be a great product has made it to that list yet, but we're constantly giving them feedback and hoping that more of these kind of items will get on there. Yes.
Anyone, any other questions? We have about 5 more minutes. Or actually, now we have about 3 more minutes. No other questions? All right, well, let's thank Jen again for such a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for coming tonight. It really was great for all of us. We appreciate it.